Hello, everybody. This is Bill from Billboard Comics again, talking to you about the world of comics as part of my Billboard Comics website. If somehow I popped up on your feed because it came out after a video you watched and you didn't get a chance to change it, hi, don't go away. Please talk to me, keep me happy, let me keep you company. But I digress. This is an installment of our Girlfriend's Guide to Comic Books. This is going to be a brief introduction to the world of comic book terminology, especially when it comes to conditioning and stuff like this. I've had previous kind of entries into this about condition and stuff like this, and I've made mention of some of these words already, and you might have an idea of like what they are or what they aren't. However, it's pointed out to me that perhaps a better explanation of some of these terms might be a little bit better. Pointed out to me by my wife, who you know, feedback from anybody is great. Feedback from your wife, you better act upon it. Hint for you people who are not yet married or are planning to get married. So I'm going to go over here a little bit brief about some basic kind of like terminology, especially when it comes to condition that you need to work out for. And like if people are talking about you know this in your presence or your boyfriend, girlfriend, father, mother, son, daughter, whoever your significant other who is collecting comic books talks about these, you have a little heads up about what they are and exactly what they're talking about. Some might be obvious to the point like you're wondering why I include it on all at this at all because it's so obvious. Others you might not have known or thought about. One in here into my research I didn't realize was what it was, but I'll talk to you when I get to that. Um, I'm always learning, always growing. Shark that does not stop swimming is dead. I don't know. I don't know. I'm a little loopy today, so please forgive me. So let's start this by saying like something about surface wear. What is surface wear on a comic book? Basically, it's kind of like just from either use or being stacked or being jostled around on in a spinner rack or a rack at a comic book store. A little bit of the glossy cover goes away. It appears worn down. It gives more of a matte finish on it. Stuff like this. Basically, it's kind of like it says, like the surface of the comic book is worn down a little bit. Sometimes it happens. Like it's pretty hard to find older books that have like a glossy cover on it again. If you do, that's amazing. But when we start about like, oh yeah, this has major surface wear on it, it's not kind of like a case of where somebody bored a hole through it by just taking a emery board to it. It's basically just like some of the stuff came off that way. Another term would be date stamps. Date stamps, when it comes to comic books, are kind of a kind of like a part of the comic book collecting era's past. Basically, what it's like back when comic books were primarily a newsstand concern and before the direct market came into play, they were basically sent back by the stores that stocked them. And I'll talk about a little bit like a change to that too. But what the stores would do basically to let them know when they should send it back is they would take like when I sold stamping things and change the date and then stamp it to like the date that it arrived. So this came in May 5th, 1983. So they would know to okay, when July 3, 1983 came around, they would be able to take that book off the stands and put it back in, and also know when to expect the next issue and stuff like that. So a lot of books from like that are sold on newsstands in the 80s, 70s, and 60s have the state stamp on it. A lot of people would consider this as being a condition issue. Having on there is like having anything marked on the comic book cover that is not the actual artwork that's on the cover. It seems to be a detriment to the condition, the grade, and the value of it. However, over the years, philosophy of that has changed a little bit. I know that CGC seems to give like a little leeway to like the date stamps on this because they're so prevalent. Every newsstand, every drugstore, every supermarket did that stamp like on it, so it's kind of hard to avoid it. So if you have a pristine, in other ways book and you have state stamp on it, it won't cost you. It shouldn't hit you that much. But if you're talking about date stamp, it means like it's the stamp put on like by the vendor to like let them know when it actually came in. Blunted corners. Basically, like when a comic book comes out, it has a sharp angle on the corners. But over time, either like just from like, you know, being put on the shelf or moved around, taken off, put it back on again. Sometimes the corners become less than actually sharp, crisp, kind of like sharp angles. Basically, this is what's called a blunted corner. It's more of a rounded corner. So if someone says, "Oh yeah, this book has a rounded a blunted corner on it," it means that it has been exposed to some blunt damage that caused it to not be a sharp, crisp angle anymore. Foxing. This is the one that I had a different idea about it. I thought foxing was Marvel, especially had a kind of thing where the covers are just a little bit taller than the actual interior. So there'd be like a lot of damage on the top of the comic book, and I thought that was foxing. However, foxing is another thing. It's about is another thing entirely different. I didn't realize that. Basically, it's there's a certain thing in paper ages, certain dots come up on it. Um, People confuse foxing with you know mold damage and stuff like that because it kind of looks like mold. It's like a brown circle, something like that. But people have done studies and scientists have looked at this, and it's not a not a, not a, not not mold. So it's something completely different, and it just happens over time. So if you find something that has this book is good, it would be near mint except for the foxing. That's what it is. There's some stains on the thing that's caused over time, but just it, I guess I don't know if it's part of the decaying process or the aging process, whatever. It develops spots on it. Usually, they'll if you see in condition and stuff, it is they'll describe the interior pages as being off-white or cream or tan or whatever. Um, this is just refers to, especially in the older books, where age and acidity came in and would change. Like all the books when they came out were bone white kind of stuff. It is, but after a while, the paper breaks down, acidity takes effect, and it turns the color of the interior ones, interior books, comic book pages, to a off-white color, and then a cream color, and then a tan color. I don't know how much this takes off from like the book value or whatever it's cost. I know that it's an important enough thing that they do mention it on CGC mentions it on its grading things that they put on like the actual thing. So it does play a part in that. When you talk about like yeah the book is cream or off white, it's not like they talk about the pages inside of it. It's not some kind of secret code behind that. Creases and color breaking creases. Creases by themselves are not terribly bad. Usually, if there's a crease in the comic book, it might even be removed via like pressing. There's a lot of pressing service. I did a video I think last week or the week before about this kind of process. However, there are worse creases than just having normal creases in it. There are creases called color breaking creases. This is creases that have been put into the comic book and did such a severe kind of um, angle or whatever. It's been the crease has been there for so long. It actually causes a break in the color of the comic book where it's black. These cannot be pressed out. You can press them out and the crease will go away, but the evidence will always remain there because by the little kind of white mark on the cover where the color was eaten away by the crease. This, of course, another thing that takes value of the comic book down is having this kind of stuff on it because obviously you can see the damage; it's really visible, and it's the other crease is kind of less because you don't really have to. Um, Sometimes it's hard to notice on the first round, and it can be fixed by pressing it. However, there's another brand like back called subscription creases. Most of the color breaking creases you have are kind of like when you turn like a tiny crease on the corner of the book where the corner flips over for whatever reason, like put back in a bag wrong or whatever. It just flips over and then it gets that thing. Subscription creases are brought on by the U.S. Postal Service. Um, Back when, especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, probably even before that, probably all the way back to the 30s when comic books started, when comic book subscription through the mails were being sent. Basically, the mailman, when he would try to put it into your mailbox, which is probably like about this big, would take the comic book and fold it in half and put it so it fit in that kind of thing. A lot of books have this from this time to actually have this stuff like this. It does affect the value, yes. Should it? That's debatable because like you have no control over it. You know, most condition things like happen over time could possibly be avoided. Not this one. Of course, like this is stopped around like the '90s, I think, like or the '80s, late '80s, '90s, when the comic book companies started to send out their comic books in like cellophane packaging with a cardboard like backing, so it doesn't get too bent. A little harder to bend in half and put it in the mailbox. Subscription creases, that's what they call it. It's like basically the crease that came from getting your mail subscription in there by the mailman folding in half to put in your mailbox. Spine rolls. Spine rolls is basically you could tell like it usually happens on a well loved book. People, when you read something and then reading it, you turn the book around and then you read it again and you turn the book around there. It's a way of reading where you have like one page at a time, but the other page is like kind of bent around there, so you have like kind of like instead of like reading it like this, you're reading it like more compact size there, and you just finish stuff in the back. This causes spine rolls, however. The spine will start to roll once it it starts to get permanent. Once you start like to do like things, every time you do stuff, it causes it stuff to roll. Depending how long it takes you to read the comic book, it could become like a permanent picture of the comic book. Spine rolls at times can actually be pressed out, but if you ever see like a comic book, instead of like flat, the corner comes up like this a little bit. That's the spine roll, and that's what causes it. This is another condition issue. What happens on like basically on older books of comic books. Usually, like something happens, and along the side, like the side of the book, the comic book cover will have develop a split. So instead of being put together like this, you'd be able to take it off like that and stuff like this. Yeah. So sometimes it's just through it becoming brittle over time. Sometimes it's by having a kind of like some kind of thing happening to it. But that's something to look out for in older books, is make sure that the spine is intact and it doesn't have like a break or a tear. It's not a tear, it's like actually it's almost like it's been cut. Like it's a split. It's a spine split. So that's why I call it spine split. They're going to look out for that. Rusty staples. Rusty staples are basically like what happens when, especially I think in the older years back before, like they actually had newfangled high tech staples. And most of them were just like being basically common everyday iron staples. If you have keep a comic book in a damp environment, or in a humid town or city or environment, you the staples would turn to rust. So you'd have like a nice brown kind of patina on it, and depending how long it has gone unnoticed or checked, you might actually have it spread in like it might stain the interior of the cover near where the staples are attached. So you might see like say a brown orange halo around where the staple was. This, of course, is nothing that brings down condition too. But also, if you decide like, well, I could get a new staple and put it in there, CGC will know if you're trying to get it graded, and you'll be hit with a restoration grade. It's an amateur restoration grade. Which nobody really wants that, because that brings the value of the comic book down really low. A tape pull. Tape pull is a lot of banes of the comic book collector's existence. If you bring in a bagging board, especially like from like before, I guess like the last couple decades, you put in bags of boards and you put piece of tape on it, and then if you need to take the comic book out of it, you have to like take it out in such a very very careful when you're taking it out, so like it doesn't catch on the tape, because sometimes it could catch on the tape, and when you take the tape off, it takes a part of the cover with it. Not enough to actually put a hole in the actual book, but it takes like the top layer of the artwork and takes out, and you have like this big white spot remaining. That's what a tape pull is. It's not like some kind of somebody pulled the tape on it or whatever. So that's the benefit. Like stuff. It also works like labels and sales stickers and price stickers and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to get those off, and usually it takes parts of the stuff with you as it goes. So if you want to avoid a tape pull, be sure to be very careful when you're taking out a bag of board that has a tape on it. And also, you should, just because if you have one of those resealable bags that has like the adhesive strip across it, also be careful on that because you get a tape pull with that as well, even though it is not tape. Brittle pages. When people complain about brittle pages in a comic book, it means that the paper has decayed so much that it's very easy to rip or fall apart or crack or whatever. Sometimes this happens when you don't take good care of it and like it's on the elements and all kinds of stuff. Just the pages will get very brittle, and you have to be especially delicate with the comic book for fear of like ripping off a cover or tearing an entire page. So that's like the brittleness happens over time for some comic books, and just to try like to keep that in mind to be on the lookout for. Detachment. Detachment is basically usually happens with either the cover or the centerfold. Sorry. Like that means like somehow the cover got separated from the staple and became obviously detached. Same thing with the interior. Sometimes like the page comes loose from the staples in the interior and becomes detached from that. It does not necessarily mean that it's gone completely. It could be like it could be still attached by one of the staples, but it means that it's very delicate and very gentle. You have to be careful to make sure it doesn't come off completely. Amateur repairs. Basically, this is kind of stuff like basically if you have a tear in the stuff, doing it by yourself, you just decide to put a piece of tape over it, or the staples are bad and you try to replace the staples. Most likely, when I've seen it, it's like the thing lies flat, the staples along the spine. They put the staples in on the corner of the cover to reinforce it. These are all will get you hit for condition and grading and all kinds of stuff like that. So, probably best to avoid as possible. Remainders. Remainders are a comic book. It's kind of like an interesting facet of the comic book. As I said earlier, when it was on a newsstand, the vendor would be able to return the comic book to its distributor and to get a refund for any unsold copies. And this happened a lot, and like they would send the whole book back, and then they realized, okay, well, this is a pain in the butt and cost money to actually send it back to them and whatnot if you have to send it through like the mail. So they decided, like, the distributors decided to come up with a different idea of like saying back the cover. One time it's the full cover, but then like they changed it to only like the logo of the book is like basically the first top half of the comic book or top third, and they just clip that out and send all those back to the comic book companies or the distributor to get a refund for any old sold ones. So they don't have to spend the money to send them all the copies back to the distributor or drop it off or have them pick them up or whatever. It's the idea is behind this, like when you're done with this, the comic book would be destroyed, would be thrown away, it'd be not put for sale. But of course, people would put it out for sale regardless. So if you see stuff like a comic book with like the top logo come off, this is why you have that. It's a remainder. It's supposed to be like destroyed. It's supposed to be like just gotten rid of. But it's a remarkable amount out there. So like a lot of stores didn't really feel the need to actually destroy any of them and maybe sold them for a nickel or something to unsuspected kids who didn't really care about the condition of the comic books. So that's about it with terminology when it comes to condition and stuff like this. I hope you found this useful. I hope I didn't put you to sleep because it's not exactly the most interesting stuff to talk about, like what words mean. Or maybe you're really into learning what words mean. I'm sorry, I don't mean to pressure that. But I hope you got something out of this. If you did, hit the like button. It helps me keep track of like what's more popular on this stuff and what's not, and so on and so forth. And comment if you have any more questions about this, or I missed something, or you want me to go over something should be added. There probably is. I try to do as much as I possibly can, but it could be wrong. And subscribe because I have a whole bunch of these coming in the pipeline, and also I have a whole catalog, a library of it going back on this. So I hope all that happens. I hope to see you again. And until I do, keep on collecting.